Sometimes it only takes one small moment to awaken a sleeping soul, one video, one smile, one act of kindness. We often underestimate the power of small deeds. Allah never does, because what we see as a scroll on a screen might be the beginning of someone's journey back to Him. He was like many others, living life on autopilot, chasing happiness in all the usual places. The world taught him that success means noise, pleasure, and followers. Deep down, there was silence, a kind of emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. He didn't know what he was missing until he started seeing something different on his feed. It wasn't a trend, it wasn't entertainment, it was peace. It was a calmness reflected in short clips of people praying, smiling after Salah, speaking softly about faith, videos his Muslim friends shared, simple, consistent reminders of a way of life he had never truly seen before. And though he didn't understand everything, something inside him responded as if his soul whispered, "This is what I've been looking for." That's how guidance often begins. Not through grand speeches or dramatic moments, but through quiet signs that reach a heart ready to listen. Those short TikTok videos weren't just pixels on a screen. They were rays of light breaking through years of confusion. Each one chipped away at the walls he had built around his heart. Every verse, every act of worship, every reflection made him think, why are these people so peaceful? Why do they look so free even in surrender? The world he came from valued self-gratification, but what he saw in those Muslims was self-purification. They didn't seem lost in themselves, they seemed anchored in something greater. That contrast touched him more deeply than words ever could. Curiosity turned into learning, learning turned into longing, and longing turned into faith. One day, after watching yet another clip, this one showing a man crying in sujud, he felt something break inside him, not a breaking of despair, but of awakening. He realized that the peace he was seeing wasn't about perfection, it was about connection, connection to the one who created him. And in that moment, he understood this was what his soul had been searching for all along. So he took a step, one quiet, trembling step, and said the words that changed everything. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. His life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became meaningful. The same videos that once felt like curiosity now became reminders of home, not the home of this world, but the home of the soul. He began to pray, not because someone told him to, but because his heart couldn't bear to stay disconnected anymore. He began to see the world differently, not as a place to chase pleasure, but as a journey back to the one who gives peace. And every time he stood in prayer, tears would fall not of regret, but of gratitude. Gratitude that Allah reached him in a way he never expected. This story teaches us something powerful. Never underestimate the impact of what you share, how you live, and how you represent your faith. Sometimes you are not just scrolling through social media, you are being watched by someone whose heart is searching for truth. You never know whose soul your small act of sincerity might touch. Maybe your smile, your prayer, or your shared post could be the moment that brings someone back to Allah. Guidance is not ours to give. It is His alone, but He often uses us as instruments of His mercy. So don't belittle your small efforts. When you share something good, when you live with peace, when you choose kindness over ego, you are planting seeds in hearts you cannot see. Some seeds will bloom immediately, others will take years. None are ever lost because Allah is the best cultivator of hearts. The one who converted to Islam because of TikTok didn't find the truth by chance. He found it because Allah guided him through the sincerity of another soul. And maybe that's the reminder we all need in a world full of distractions. Be the reason someone remembers Allah. Be the kind of person whose actions make people curious about faith. Because sometimes the most powerful dawah is not in what you preach, it's in what you reflect. And who knows, perhaps your small act of goodness today could become someone else's door to paradise tomorrow. He was an ordinary man, scrolling through his phone just like millions do every day, seeking nothing more than distraction from the noise of life, unaware that within that endless stream of videos, Allah had placed a key meant only for his heart. Each day he came across the same faces, the same voices, the same trends that offered quick bursts of pleasure, but left behind an echo of emptiness. He laughed, he watched, he scrawled, but deep down something was missing. One day, his Muslim friend sent him a TikTok video. It was short, simple, and calm. It showed a man spreading his prayer mat on the ground, raising his hands in surrender and bowing before his Lord. There was no music, no glitter, no performance, just silence, sincerity, and submission. He didn't understand the Arabic words. He didn't even know the meaning of what was being said, but he felt something that he couldn't explain. There was a strange peace in that video, a tranquility that seemed to settle into his chest like a long-lost truth returning home. He scrolled past it at first, but that image lingered. Later that night, when everything was quiet and the world had gone to sleep, he thought about it again. What kind of peace was that? Why did it look so real, so grounding, so unlike the chaos of everything else? He had spent years chasing happiness in fleeting moments, friends, relationships, parties, achievements, but none of them filled that silent ache within. Yet here, in 1 minute of stillness, he saw a serenity that the whole world seemed to be missing. He began to watch more of those videos his Muslim friend shared, at first out of curiosity, then out of longing. Videos about prayer, about gratitude, about surrender to something greater than the self. He didn't realize it, but his heart was already being softened by the one who guides hearts. He saw people waking up before dawn to wash, stand, and whisper words of love and hope into the darkness. He saw faces wet with tears, not of pain, but of peace. He saw men and women who had nothing in this world, yet carried an inner light that no hardship could dim. And he thought, how could these people be so content when life is so hard? What do they have that I don't? Slowly, he began to read. He searched what those words meant. Allah ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. He read about a God who was one, who needed nothing, who had no partners, no rivals, no weaknesses. He read about a prophet who lived in humility, who forgave his enemies, who prayed for mercy for those who hurt him. The more he read, the more he cried. Not out of guilt, but out of recognition, as though he had known this truth all along, buried beneath years of distraction. Each night he felt his heart awaken a little more, drawn by a love he didn't yet understand. Then one day, as he watched another simple video, a man weeping in sujood, his heart broke open. He felt a surge of peace so deep, it brought him to tears. For the first time, he whispered, "God, guide me." That whisper became his doorway to Islam. When he finally said the words of the Shahada, it felt like the world paused, the noise fell silent, the emptiness disappeared, and for the first time his soul felt whole. It wasn't just a change of religion, it was a return to his true nature. His Muslim friend, who had unknowingly planted those seeds through simple videos, was overwhelmed with gratitude, realizing that even a small act of sharing goodness can become the means of someone's salvation. The man's life transformed, not overnight. In the quiet rhythm of new beginnings, prayer became his anchor, remembrance became his comfort, and faith became his purpose. He no longer searched for happiness in the world, he found it in the one who made it. And every time he bowed his head to the ground, he remembered that peace he once saw on a screen, the peace that brought him home. His story became a reminder for everyone who hears it. Never underestimate the power of small acts done with sincerity, for Allah can turn even a short video into a lifetime of guidance. What seems ordinary to us can be extraordinary in His plan, because guidance belongs to Him alone, and He gives it to whom He wills in the most beautiful and unexpected ways. It's amazing how Allah can use the simplest moments to completely transform a person's heart. This man's journey began not in a masjid, not through books or lectures, but through a screen that most people use for distraction. He didn't even realize that he was walking toward guidance. He was just scrolling through life, trying to escape his emptiness. Yet, the very platform that often pulls people away from Allah became the path that led him closer. That's how divine wisdom works. It meets you where you are. Even in the digital noise of the modern world, when he saw his Muslim friend's video, it was just a short clip, barely a minute long. But within that minute was something his heart had been searching for all his life. Peace, stillness, meaning it was the image of prayer that captivated him. A man bowing his head to the ground in humility, whispering to the unseen creator, surrendering everything to the one who controls it all. He couldn't understand the words. Yet he felt something deeper than understanding, a pull, a recognition. His heart was telling him, this is truth. He began to wonder why this simple act looked so powerful, why it seemed to fill a void that nothing else could. He had chased so many forms of happiness before: money, success, validation, love, but none of them lasted. The peace he saw in that video wasn't dependent on material things. It came from surrender, from letting go, from being small in front of the one who is infinite. He started to realize that maybe, just maybe, peace wasn't about having everything go right. It was about connecting to the one who is always right, always there, always near. As the days passed, he couldn't stop thinking about it. His curiosity became reflection, and reflection became yearning. He watched more of those videos, clips of people praying, reciting Qur'an, speaking about patience, about gratitude, about trusting Allah even when life hurts. Every word pierced his heart because it spoke to something deeper than logic. It spoke to the soul. He saw people who had every reason to be broken, yet they were smiling through tears, thanking God through pain, and rising again after every fall. It made him question his own beliefs, his own purpose, his own understanding of happiness. The more he learned about Islam, the more he saw beauty in its simplicity. He read about the unness of Allah, about mercy and accountability, about the idea that every hardship carries hidden wisdom. It wasn't just religion, it was a way of life that made sense. He realized that the peace he envied in others wasn't exclusive, it was available to anyone willing to surrender their ego to the Creator. When he finally took his shahada, it was like his heart exhaled after years of suffocation. For the first time, he wasn't searching anymore. He had found what his soul was made for. And that moment wasn't just about him. It was about how Allah had written this path for him long before he even knew it existed. The friend who shared those videos might have thought he was doing something small, but in the eyes of Allah, it was monumental. It was Dawah in its purest form, simple, sincere, and powerful. This story reminds us that guidance doesn't always come through grand gestures or loud voices. Sometimes it comes quietly through a screen, through a tear, through a single act of sharing truth. It shows that when Allah wants to guide someone, nothing, not distance, not disbelief, not even a phone screen, can stand in the way. Because the hearts are in his hands, and when he turns a heart toward light, even the smallest spark can ignite a lifetime of faith. When he first started learning about Islam, everything felt so new, yet deeply familiar. He didn't grow up hearing the call to prayer or reading verses from the Quran, but when he heard them for the first time, something within him stirred as if his heart already knew these words long before his mind did. It wasn't just a religion he was discovering, it was a truth that had been quietly waiting for him. He started noticing how Islam didn't demand perfection before welcoming him. It didn't tell him to come only when he was flawless, only when he had it all figured out. It said, "Come as you are." That simplicity broke his heart in the most beautiful way because for the first time he felt accepted by something bigger than himself. Every prayer he watched, every verse he listened to, and every story he read made him realize that Islam isn't about rules without reason. It's about love with discipline, mercy with purpose, and surrender with peace. He realized that in Islam, even tears become forms of worship, and even pain becomes a path to purification. He began to understand that every heartbreak, every failure, every loss he ever faced was Allah calling him closer, preparing him for this moment of awakening. As he started to practice more, he also began to notice how life didn't suddenly become easy. In fact, some days felt harder than before. The difference was that now he had somewhere to turn when it got hard. Before Islam, he used to feel lost when things went wrong. He would drown in his thoughts, overthink everything, and question his worth. Now, when hardship came, he would fall to the ground in sujud, whispering to Allah. Knowing that he hears even the silent cries of the heart, that realization changed everything. He no longer sought people's approval or the world's validation. He was learning what it meant to live for something eternal. The discipline of prayer started to reshape his heart. Each time he stood for Salah, he was reminded that no matter how chaotic the world becomes, peace can always be found in bowing down. He began to feel a strength he had never known before, a quiet, unshakable faith that grew not from everything going right, but from trusting Allah even when things went wrong. He started to notice beauty in moments he once ignored. The sound of rain, the stillness before dawn, the breath he takes before saying Allahu Akbar. Everything began to feel like a sign, a reminder, a message from his Creator saying, "I never left you." Over time, he realized that his conversion was not just a change of belief, it was a transformation of identity. Islam didn't take away who he was, it gave him a better version of himself. He learned that faith isn't a destination, but a journey that constantly refines the soul. Some days his iman felt strong, other days it felt fragile, but he understood now that both states were part of growth, just like a heart beats in rhythm. Up and down, strong and soft, faith too fluctuates, but as long as it beats for Allah, it's alive. His journey taught him that Dawah isn't about big speeches or perfect appearances. It's about sincerity. His Muslim friend had no idea that sharing a few simple TikTok videos could change a life. Yet that's how guidance works. It flows through sincerity, through action done for Allah's sake alone. That's what made his story so powerful. It wasn't built on miracles, but on small moments that Allah turned into a miracle. Every time he looked back, he couldn't help but cry, not out of sadness, but gratitude, because he now saw how every detour, every delay, and every disappointment had been a part of Allah's plan to bring him home. His life became a living proof that no one is too far from Allah's mercy, that sometimes all it takes is one sincere heart, one act of kindness, one shared video to awaken a soul. And in that realization, he found not only faith, but purpose, a purpose to live, to share, and to walk the same path of light that once reached him through a simple screen. There came a time in his journey when the initial excitement began to fade and reality set in. The beauty of faith was still there, but so were the tests. There were days when he woke up and questioned whether he was strong enough to keep walking this path. He faced the stares of those who didn't understand, the criticism of those who judged his past, and the whispers of self-doubt that told him he wasn't good enough to be a Muslim. He would sometimes sit in silence and think, what if I fail? What if I make mistakes? But then something within him reminded him of the very message that drew him to Islam in the first place, that Allah's mercy is bigger than any sin, that no one is beyond his forgiveness, and that the door of repentance is never closed. He started to understand that faith isn't about being perfect, it's about never giving up. Even the strongest believers had moments of weakness, yet what made them beloved to Allah was that they kept returning to him. So on the days when his heart felt heavy, he would still make wudu, even if his tears mixed with the water. He would still raise his hands, even if his voice trembled. Because deep down, he knew that Allah listens, not to the eloquence of words, but to the sincerity of hearts. He also began to see how guidance works in mysterious ways. The same TikTok videos that once sparked his curiosity now became reminders of how Allah can use anything to guide a soul. It made him realize that Dawah doesn't require perfection or status, it requires sincerity. His Muslim friend never preached, never pressured, never argued. All he did was share glimpses of light, videos about peace, reflection, and purpose, and that was enough to awaken something within. This taught him a profound lesson. When you do something sincerely for Allah, even the smallest act can ripple across hearts and change lives. Sometimes we underestimate how powerful a simple act of goodness can be, but Allah never lets sincerity go to waste. So he made it his mission to do the same, to spread small reminders, to be kind, to show what Islam truly is through action, not argument. He realized that being a Muslim is not about trying to convince people with words, it's about embodying truth so beautifully that it speaks louder than any speech. This understanding made his faith deeper, gentler, and more patient. Over time, as he grew in knowledge and worship, he began to see how Islam wasn't just about rituals, it was about transformation. Prayer became more than movements. It became a language between his soul and his Creator. Fasting became more than hunger. It became a way to discipline his desires and remember those who have less. Charity became more than giving money. It became a way to cleanse his heart from attachment. He began to realize that every command in Islam had a purpose. It wasn't meant to restrict, but to free. Every act of worship carried wisdom, every test carried mercy, and every moment of pain carried hidden blessings. The more he reflected, the more he understood that Islam is not just a religion. It's a way of living that realigns your soul with its divine purpose. It teaches you to love without attachment, to give without expectation, and to endure without despair. It shapes your heart to find peace not in what you own, but in who you turn to when everything else fades. And as his faith matured, he found himself reflecting on how his entire journey began, from a simple video shared by a friend to a complete transformation of his heart and soul. He often thought about how Allah guided him through such ordinary means, reminding him that nothing is accidental in this world. Every connection, every moment, and every message has a purpose written by the one who controls all hearts. He learned that sometimes guidance doesn't come with loud signs or miracles. It comes quietly, softly, like a seed planted in the heart that blooms over time. He realized that his story wasn't just his. It was a reflection of how Allah continues to bring light into the world through the simplest acts of sincerity. And whenever he looked back, he no longer saw pain, confusion, or loss. He saw divine planning, mercy, and love in disguise. His heart found rest in knowing that he was never alone, not even in his darkest moments. For him, Islam wasn't just a new chapter of life, it was the rediscovery of his soul, the return to the one who had been calling him all along.